we call our members homies.
Hey,
So whenever I
let's
refer
go. That's
to
cool.
them, I'm
I
going
did
to
not
talk
see that
about
coming, even
I'm going to
even
talk
though it
about the
should. I
homies.
should have thought
All
about
right.
it.
Yeah. So these are the homies that I serve, and that it's been so amazing to watch people grow through all of these resources. And the idea is we want it to be essentially very similar to joining like a CrossFit gym, right? And I don't do CrossFit, so I'm not. But what I understand is those kinds of people that go do that, they're like really into it and they put in the work, right? And they really go hard and they're dedicated on a different level than like your typical gym user, right? And so there's this cultural thing that we want people that are really dedicated to being like their very best selves in all capacities, and that includes music. What's up, homies? We're bringing you another crossover episode that was recently recorded for the Sync Gems podcast with my boy Roy Matz. This was actually a 2-part episode on his podcast, but he was gracious enough to let me post the whole conversation right here for you. We went super deep on this episode to discuss a lot of mindset, philosophy, and even a bit of spirituality, while also dropping lots of nuggets for entrepreneurs who are working to create the life of their dreams. Be sure to check out Roy's podcast. It's called Sync Gems, and it's all about how people are building their music careers by making music for TV, film, and advertising. As always, if you get a lot out of these podcasts, including Roy's podcast, be sure to share it with your homies so that they can get value out of it too. Peace.
Yo, what is happening? It's your boy Roy, and it's another episode of Sync Gems. Pepper. We did an amazing interview with Logan Crowell. So we get into Logan's story, his mindset, how he basically created, I want to call it an incubator, a hub, but basically a place, a nonprofit for musicians to thrive. And he also has sync agents and representatives come in and critique songs and also give workshops. It's crazy what this dude's going there. I met him in Bali a few months back, and we finally got to doing this episode today. But I'm telling you, this first part, you got to hear it to hear the second part, because then you understand about how this person kind of operates and thinks. And without further ado, my man, Logan Crowell.
What's up, man?
What's happening?
How are you?
I'm blessed. I was a bit sick for a few days, but I'm getting back. Today I'm gonna have my first coffee in like a week, which is great. Man, how have you been? It's been a while since we met.
Right. Yeah, met in Bali, which was amazing. Thank you for the hospitality and showing us around the waterfalls and whatnot. Things have been good. We're back here in Nashville. So I'm based out of Nashville, run a music community out here. And just kind of like leading the charge for this collective model for producers and music creators to get together and share facilities, share connections, share resources and things like that. So it's cool.
That's amazing,
Find
man.
the good fight.
Before we're gonna talk about fighting the good fight, I want to talk a little bit about your trajectory and what brought you here to home, into starting your own community and actually like providing a home for musicians and a hub. I think we talked about the word hub when we last met, and I would love to know how that came up, and I would love to hear the story again because I heard it once.
Sure.
And I think so. Here's the thing. I mean, like my listeners know me for like ranting a little bit, but I feel like the story that you told me was a story that took time to kind of sit, because it's a story of risk, it's a story of decisions, it's a story of with that's almost too much for me to take and to fathom. So I feel like
Yeah.
I'll need to listen to it again,
Sure.
and I want to know your trajectory from how you started in music, like what was your upbringing like towards where you are now, and of course, home.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll start with the music side. I've just always been a music freak. Always loved live music, and really got into to the live music scene, to the jam band scene, electronic music scene. Really early on, I was like the freaker by the speaker guy, if you know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So that was kind of my thing, and I played drums and percussion and stuff, but I never really had like the discipline to take it seriously. And then some things happened in my mid 20s that made me kind of get my shit together, and I started writing songs a lot. I learned to play the guitar and started writing, and I really fell in love with the songwriting process. It's such a beautiful thing, and can be such a healing thing to write a song and to kind of like take all these emotions, or take the feelings or the sensory perceptions that you have, and turn them into a piece of art. So I kind of just went all in on music. I was like, okay, this is my thing. This is my purpose in life. Is to be, is to make music, is what I really thought. And right after making I made like two EPs with some songs that I'd written, and kind of fumbled through that process, and then also fumbled through like releasing them, understanding how the music industry works, just all it's like the most common thing that every music creator goes through. It's like, okay, learn to play all these instruments and write all these songs and make music and all that. You think that that's really the key to getting into the music business. It's just like you can't even show up unless you know how to do all that, and then it gets really hard. And so as I was fumbling through all the different things that the music creators go through, I realized I just needed to move to a real city where like there's musical infrastructure, where the music industry actually exists. And so the closest one to me at the time, I was living in Arkansas, so not much of a music scene there, kind of like big fish in a small pond thing. And then the closest music city to me was Nashville. So I found out about Belmont University, which is it's kind of like a world renowned music business college. They have other majors and things too, but they're very well known for their music business program. They're very well known for getting people like plugged into the music industry, helping people, really develop the relationships that they need to actually, do the thing professionally. So I decided to finish school at Belmont. I was 32 at the time. So went back to college. I had a year and a half that I had to go in order to finish my degree. And I was studying music business and production. And then right after I got to town, I'm like, man, I'm ambitious. I'm talented. I think I really know how to play. I want to find other people. Where do I go to connect? Which studios should I work out of? Which, who can I trust in the scene too? You kind of like get people come out of the woodwork with like young hopeful artists. Or I wasn't that young, but the younger, I think, the more susceptible you are to it. But a lot of scam artists and stuff around trying to take advantage of people with kind of musical dreams. So all these things kind of culminated into me having this massive vision of going, there's like one thing that solves all of this. You could just have a nonprofit and everybody pays a membership, kind of like a gym, kind of like a cross between a gym and a WeWork type model. and everybody pays a membership, and you have 24/7 studios. We have music business workshops. We bring in different people at least once a month to pitch music to, sync reps. I know that's a big part of, or that is kind of the subject of the podcast. So um, definitely would be down to talk about that. But we, you know, it's this just one stop kind of development solution. So over the years, so I had the idea to do it in January of 2016, and then by April of 2018, we'd actually built out the facility and opened the doors and started memberships, which at the time felt like a long time, but it's actually, in retrospect, a very, very fast development, especially because at first I wasn't even working on this full time. I was doing some other music industry stuff. But the pieces kind of came together for us to get this insanely cool space in East Nashville. So members can swipe in with a key card 24/7. There's rehearsal space, recording space, writing space. We have a stage over here with an indoor venue that holds about 200 people. It's a co-work space too. So there's different computer monitors and things where you can just kind of post up and work on your stuff. We have pool tables and ping pong tables. It's pretty wild how extensive it is and how close uh, we are to really fulfilling on the initial vision of this like community center for music creators, because that was really what I saw Nashville needed when I moved here. And that's, once I had the idea, I was like, man, that sounds so cool. I don't know how I'll ever be able to do that, but I'm going to regret if I don't try.
Mhm.
And so I put my musical hopes on the back burner and just, as soon as I graduated, I basically went all in on it. And it's been wild. It's been a really crazy ride for sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, I feel like before we get into anything sync, I feel like it's important to dig a little bit deeper into that story, because so you finish, is it Belmont? Is that
Belmont,
what it's, yeah. So you finish Belmont and you have this idea for other musicians basically to
solving my own problem, basically. They
right,
say,
right,
a lot of the best businesses are started by someone solving their own problem, which was I needed a
right.
place to plug in, record, meet people, learn about the biz, network, all
Yeah.
that. So,
Kind of a plug and go, a human plug and go.
yeah, a hub,
Yeah, a
plug
hub.
in.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's what I want to kind of I want to start digging into. I feel like, so that here's the thing. Here's the thing I most struggle with. I feel like my identity as a musician is so strong that if I start venturing to something out of music, my
Mm,
identity will feel like it is kind of tainted, if that makes
heard.
sense. It's like, oh, I'm going into real estate, or I'm going into this, or am I making an excuse not to go in with music?
Oh
So
yeah,
I
I went
feel
through all
like,
that.
what was your process into going like, okay, I love to make music, but I have to keep this in the back burner in order to make this happen. What was it like for you? And I would love as well, and it's a long ass question, but I would love for you as well to expand about how this all came together, because it's a crazy story with the building.
Yeah, it
I still
is.
remember it, and just like being able to raise money and do all these business stuff, all this business stuff suddenly.
Yeah.
Like what was all this like for you, like on your end?
Yeah, it was very weird because again, I moved out here with like I'm a believer in just going all in and like don't take no for an answer. And if you would have told me when I was moving uh to Nashville that less than 2 years later I would be fully like shifting my wait, no, really less than a year later, because like I tiptoed in, I guess, in the sense of like my mindset of being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
versus just out here looking to get plugged in and like explore my musical chops, right? So a couple of things happened. One of the biggest ones was I ended up getting a repetitive use injury in my left hand, which is like my fretting hand for guitar. And that was like my main thing, was playing guitar. And I got something called de Quervain's tenosynovitis, and it got to where I couldn't play guitar for longer than maybe 15 minutes without my hand and my wrist hurting really bad. And by the time I figured out what it was and actually got to it, it was so bad that it was going to take a long time to heal up. And if I didn't quit playing guitar for a while, then it wasn't going to heal. But that's fine because I play keys and stuff too. And like I was like, okay, that I'll learn to play slide. Like, I don't care. But that was a huge piece of it because I was in such this habit of like holding my guitar for probably 2 to 3 hours a day, right? So that's a huge thing to all of a sudden, like that's a huge hole in your schedule that you now don't have. And then another thing I think is just the level. So I first started thinking that I started seeing that, I was 32 and I was, after a few months here in Nashville, I was getting around and the level of talent here is just insane. Like it's absolutely insane. And I'd see 20-year-old kids that, could run circles around me musically. But I had gone through some real tough life stuff. So I had this level of like focus and grit and determination and wisdom. I'd gone to business school too. So I had a pretty good, good background in business and basically, I lean a lot into the personal development space. So if people start following me, I put out a weekly newsletter and it's music focused, but so much of it's about personal development. So a lot of my thinking, a lot of what I would tell you, like, how did I accomplish this, is because of personal development thinking. And we can go deeper into that if you want, but I'm gonna kind of stay on the story. So it was these things of going, wow, I feel like I've always had this sense that my life needs to be about service. And for music is a service, and it's a beautiful service. Sync is a service. But I felt this need to like provide a service to other people to find fulfillment. And this is all this is like literally, I'm thinking through all this and going, why isn't there like a music community or something here in Nashville? This is all during my first semester. So within a few months of moving into town. And then it was literally like the strength of the vision is all I can tell you. Like, that's what made me go, wow, if this could happen, I would be willing to just kind of like focus all of my energy on it, basically. The vision was stronger than any musical inspiration that I've had, any sort of psychedelic experience that I've had. I mean, it's like, it was intense whenever it came down. And it was like, I tell people, it's like I downloaded, a zip file or something that I could see the end result, but it took so long for me to unpack what that meant. Like, how would something like this work? And what does that really mean? And what kind of organization would that be? And, it felt like something got implanted into me. It was very, very intense. So I'm like faithful, right? Faithful to, the call of the universe or what have you, right? If you get a vision like that, you need to go for it. But I had, from this personal development background, I had this sense that, wow, this could be my service. This could be, my sort of hero's journey, if you will, right? Of accomplishing this in the world.
Yeah.
And, so I started just working on it, a few times a week. I would work on it, and I was still in school for a year after I had the idea. and got out of school December of 2016, and by probably February of 2017, I had gotten pretty far on the project to the point where I just like needed to find a space. I was like, I need to kind of start figuring out where this is going to be. I had a lot of the other things kind of, I built this online community so that our members could sign up and have and meet each other virtually and all these things. I was thinking pretty far ahead of it. I was like, I was like, I got this, right? That's another thing. Honestly, I was a little bit naive of how hard it was going to be honest with you. Like if I knew how hard, a lot of people that start real hard businesses say this, but if you knew how hard it was going to be up front, it would be really hard to convince yourself to do it. But I'm glad I did. I'm not saying that I'm not glad I did. It's been such a beautiful journey, and it's stretched me and pushed me to grow in every way possible. But it's a crazy thing where I had linked up with a friend who had an underground space that literally and figuratively underground. It was underground venue space on the block over here, block over from where I'm at right now. I'm at 615 Main Street, and we were at 707 Main Street originally. And the space above him was vacant, and I was working with the leasing agent to work out what it would look like to lease that space. I was looking at leasing, I think, close to 2,000 square feet at that point. And we were going to turn it into writers' rooms, a small studio, and a conference room or something like that. And then we were going to use the venue downstairs to do all the events and everything. And it was going to be, I was going to kind of grow into the ultimate vision, if you will. And then as a crazy twist of fate would have it, that fell through for reasons I still don't know. But all of a sudden, the listing agent just started ghosting me. And so I finally gave up on it, and I was super distraught. And then again, because of my personal development background, I had this other voice in my head that was like, no, there's something better out there for you. Get up right now and just get in your car and go and drive around. I swear this is 100% true. Just drive around and, don't take no for an answer, right? This is happening. And so just a little bit later, so I drove into town, I looked around, I saw this building. I was like, I wonder what's in that building. And I ended up driving back home, which isn't to my house, which isn't far from here. And I called up to this building to find out what they were about. And they told me to come up for a tour. And so I came up to take a tour of the space, and it's a 50,000 square foot office building. Okay. But,
from 2,000 to 50,000, yeah.
Well, I'm not leasing the whole 50,000, but the building is legit. It's where there's a rooftop deck. There's this, huge courtyard outside, like a 6,000 square foot courtyard with an outdoor stage where we can have events. And it's wild how you couldn't dream up a better scenario than kind of how we landed. But it was really, really crazy because when the front desk lady was taking me around for the tour, it's just a bunch of pretty small offices, but there was this one office that had 2 rooms, and it was in the corner of the building. So I thought maybe that could be like a writer's room and just an office for me. I could start real small. And so she took me in the whole tour and then took me back, and I was about to go out the front door. I was like, can I see that one office again? And I was like, it's one of the first ones you showed me. It had a, ensuite, little, another little office attached to it as well. And so she took me back there, and there was a guy with a tool belt on, and he's spackling the wall. I guess the previous tenant had moved out, and he wasn't there when I first walked in, but he was there the second time I walked in. And I made this joke to her about the fact that there weren't any windows in the room. And he turned around and he introduced himself, and he's the owner of the building.
Wow.
Okay, this guy obviously is doing fine. Like there's no reason for him to be in there with the tool belt on spackling the wall, right? Like he's got people that do that. But I guess the guy must have been out of town. I still don't know exactly why he was doing that day. I should ask him. But anyway, he turns around and he starts fishing it out of me. He's like, "Well, what are you doing? What do you got going on?" I was like, "Well, you don't really have what I need, but I was thinking maybe I could just get something to get started." And he was like, "Well, tell me about it. Tell me what you want to do." I was like, "Okay, well, it's going to be 24/7 access. It's co-work space, kind of like what you have here, but instead of offices, we're going to have recording studios, rehearsal space, and I want to put a small music venue inside of it as well. We're going to do music business workshops. It's going to be a membership model. Oh, and it's a nonprofit." He goes, "Wow." He's like, "That's an awesome idea." He goes, "Well, is anybody doing that in Nashville?" And I said, "Man, I don't think anybody in the whole world's doing this." And he was like, "Wow, that's awesome." And he goes, "Maybe we can do it in the garage." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We have 7,000 square feet of garage space on the back side of this building." And so he was like, "Come jump in my truck." And we literally drove around the backside of the building. And this is like totally not on the office tour because it's like it was old and in need of renovation. But after it was about $1.5 million that was spent to build out the facility. And it's epic. It's like it's wild. Oh, and to make it even more bizarre, the area code of Nashville 615, the address of this facility's 615 Main Street. And whenever I met the guy that owns the building, I was living at 615 Skyview Drive in Nashville. And then not long after we locked in home, my fiance, who you met, Mary, she was working as a real estate agent at 615 Woodland. So I had like 3 615 addresses and a 615 area code simultaneously.
Yeah.
It was very weird. Very for whatever that. I mean, like
Some
maybe some
crazy
numerology
numerology shit.
expert that's
Yeah.
listening can
If
chime
there's a
in.
numerology expert listening to this, come out of the woodworks and tell us what the 615 shit is.
Yeah,
We want to know.
we want to know.
Okay, so he takes you on a tour. He loves the idea, and then what happens next?
Well, we had to test it to make sure that we could get loud out there without disrupting the rest of the offices. So there's about 70 offices in this building, I think. And so obviously that's like his bread and butter. He didn't want to risk all that for some crazy music studio or whatever venue. So we did a bunch of testing and it was like really perfect. Again, it was this big cavernous space. So we had to this is a room inside of a room. There's tons of build out and acoustic treatment and all that. But he was like, "Man, if you're serious about it, keep coming around and let's work it out." And I was like, "Are you for real?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm for real." He's like, "I really think that's cool. And I think it would be complementary to what we're doing here because, office people are here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So they also have 5 conference rooms in that part of the space and all these break rooms. And like I said, rooftop deck, all this. So all this extra space that nobody's even using other than Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. He was like, he's like, "Y'all, you're creative, like music people, y'all like to stay up late, right?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely." I was like, "It will get used. Don't worry." So he's just very community oriented dude. And, really, really, kind of saw it that I had a vision for what this thing was going to be. And, if I could leave a nugget maybe with the listeners, is like, having a really compelling vision can move things for you in such a cool way. And they tell you that in business schools, like, "Oh, start with your mission statement and your vision and blah blah blah," and it sounds so retarded when you're listening to it, but But in my
And you got to do
experience,
it
like,
in a Kermit the Frog voice, by the way.
but it actually works in this, if you get something where it's compelling and other people can see it, then, Seth Godin talks about it. He uses the word remarkable, right? Do something remarkable that's actually going to make somebody remark. Like, word of mouth was and always will be, has been, is and always will be the best form of marketing, right? So if you can just like get people talking about something because it's crazy and different and new and unique and innovative, that can make things happen. So, I started putting together decks and one pagers and, really uh, just brushing up on the idea. But again, I'd been working on it for almost a year and a half before I met him. And I just went ahead and got like a desk here. So a co-working desk. I started just like paying, like showing that I'm steady. Here's another good one. It's like you're trying to cook up a long-term deal with somebody like that. Like, you got to spend a lot of time. They got to know that you are steady at the wheel. And so I was working all the time. I had another business at the time, and I was working. I was here all the time, and I worked. I think they intentionally put me across the table from his wife, from the owner's wife. She worked in the same area of the building I did. And we worked across tables from each other, and so she was always working late. I was working late, and we ended up being really good friends. And so I'm sure that helped too. And then, after a couple months of just staying around, staying on it, cooking up the deal, uh, you know, it came down to it, and I was like, man, you know, let's figure out what this is really going to look like financially, and let's go ahead and start making some things happen. And once somebody like this is, like the owner of this building he was willing to put over $1 million. That was his sort of budget for his end, right? Was $1 million
Wow.
to remake the space because it's his space, right? So he owns the space. We lease the space, but he built out 7,000 square feet. So we split it in half, and we turned half of it into the music studio space. So we leased 3,500 square feet, but then we have all this common area and these event spaces and kitchen and, like I said, the recreation area and all that. That's shared with our members and with the rest of the building. And
Wow.
it's called Center 615, by the way. So if anybody from Nashville is listening, it's awesome. Definitely check out Center 615 if you're in the market for workspace. So I want to give them a shout out because I really love these guys. They've been amazing partners. And then, having somebody like that in the deal and believing in the deal and willing to put that kind of money down on it, all of a sudden it was a little bit easier for me to figure out how to take it to the bankers. I took it to some bankers that my family knows. And so there had to be some collateral. So, like, my mom had a rent house, and she still does, actually. So, thankfully. But she did a home equity line of credit on it. So
Wow.
basically, we kind of sold this deal to the banks where she would basically leverage her house to get me $250,000 to build out the studios and, like, basically customize the space and then get do the launch, right? So that was my end in it. So the total build out was close to 1.5 because the owner actually went over budget a little bit. We opened it in April 2018, less than 2 years before the pandemic, which was a whole other kind of crazy thing. But we had a lot of momentum out of the gate. Again, it's doing something so different. And because we have an event space, we were having workshops, shows and parties and networking events and, doing everything. I was working
Yeah.
100 hours a week, easy.
Yeah.
I would be here till 3 or 4 in the morning cleaning up and stuff. Thankfully, it's not like that anymore. But, you have to make a lot of sacrifices to, yeah, I really believe that as humans we're capable of so much more than we can understand, or especially more than most people give themselves credit for. But you really do have to be clear on the vision, and then be willing to just make a lot of sacrifices along the way of, you know, seeing it through. Because the bigger the vision, the more it's going to test you.
Yeah, man. Whoa. So many things come up to me that I can go into right now. And yeah, the main thing is, how does one um how do you stay so stable on the wheel when it's like that, these amounts? Like, I'm sure you haven't seen these amounts before. Like, I mean, we're fucking musicians. Like, for a musician to deal, to take one, to and like work so hard for 1.5 mil, money that's not there, like it's not
Yeah,
necessarily yours. And
yeah. It would
and
have sucked for a lot of people if it didn't work,
yeah, if
right?
it flopped. But
Yeah.
also, like, yeah, how do you, and that's the thing, like, you're talking about doing something remarkable, but I feel like there's, again, there's more. there's there's that street smarts, there's that support you've had, there needs to be some sort of an unwavering, almost cult leader like belief, to me. Like,
Mhm.
that's what I feel like. There has to be this such I mean, like, cult is the hot topic in my mind, so that's why I'm saying it. But
It has been called
there
that.
has to be like this, there has to be this something that I feel like, again, most people don't see in their day to day, and that's what fascinates me about the story. And you know what? Like, this is what this podcast about. The podcast is not necessarily about people who are killing it in the sync game, but it's more so about the mindset they needed to embrace in order to get into that kind of to
Mhm.
what they're doing. And that's what's hard for me to wrap my mind around. I'm just saying, like, it's so crazy to me that everything happened with all this serendipity, all this stuff, and and you stood behind it and you followed through. And I'm like, the question to me is what motivated you, like, once you get that 1.5, like, you do all the work for that, which I imagine is a ton of work. Like,
Oh, yeah.
what's going on in your mind from then? Like, you got the money, you're starting the thing. What's going on in your mind then?
Yeah. You know, you said it, mindset, man, is the key to all this stuff, you know. I pretty much believe that our, our the only thing holding us back for the most part is fear. You know, different people have different abilities and strengths and all that. So you're suited to certain things, but it's really fear and layers of fear that is, it's keeping people from sending that email or pitching for that opportunity, or even putting their music out there. And again, having this background in personal development, that's really, I would say, like, if I didn't have that, it didn't matter how, like, if I was smart enough or whatever, because it's so much more than smart. It's like this unwavering faith that there is an underlying sense of purpose to our existence. In Eastern philosophy, they call it dharma, where you're like living in the exact way that you were designed to live. And I had already just been sold out to these kinds of ideas that that my life could be uniquely suited for a certain purpose. And that's what I thought music was. Honestly, I was like, that's what it kept coming back to me over and over again. I was like, oh, I just love music so much, and I can pick up instruments pretty easily, and I can sing pretty well, I can write real well, whatever, and understand theory, and just like they say, what would you do for fun, right? That's another way that people kind of like. discover your purpose or whatever.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you just had him, if money wasn't an object, like money didn't matter at all, what would you do? And he kept coming back to me, I would just play music and do, do music. Right. And so, you know, along the way, I'd read all these books and done all these spiritual practices. I had been meditating already. I started meditating seriously in 2009. So, by 2017, that's 8 years of solid meditation on a daily basis. So it's a sort of big big unlock for me personally, and I've seen it work for countless other people. I definitely recommend that people learn some form of meditation. At this point in my journey, I use something called TM, which is Transcendental Meditation. Very cool, but I started with just like mindfulness meditations, guided meditations, doing different mantras and things like that. So find something that feels good to you and just stick with it. But to get back to the real challenge, which is dealing with your own fear, your own flexibility, your ability to shift your identity, and to embrace new challenges and to just basically live outside of your comfort zone, right? The growth happens outside of our comfort zone. And so if you thrust yourself into this long trajectory, high growth situation, you just got to know you're going to be super uncomfortable for a long time. And you got to be willing. That's kind of what I was saying about the sacrifices before. You got to really be willing to just make the sacrifice and be uncomfortable and be comfortable in the discomfort. And, a lot of this comes from like present moment awareness too, because what'll happen is we judge we judge the moment too often, and we say something's wrong with this, right? Something's wrong here. Then this happened with me over and over again after COVID happened, of me just like being forced again to deal with fear on a deep, deep level because it looked like it was just all going to fall apart. And judging the situation, telling myself that it's wrong, that they're wrong for shutting us down, they're wrong. And, to be honest, maybe there's some truth to all that. But where the strength comes, so your power can never be found in victimhood. And so the deal with mindset basically is a binary thing. It's either empowering or disempowering. And that's the way you can basically get down to the bottom of a mindset. It's not about being true or being false or, being realistic or pessimistic or positive. Is it empowering or disempowering? And so what happens is whenever we judge the moment and we see that we think that something's wrong, then it puts us in this state of resistance against what is. And what happens is we give up our power. We give up our power because we essentially become victims to our environment instead of knowing that we are ultimately the experiencers and the sort of, creators of our existence and of our environment. And so a lot of meditation work can get you to where you can switch these mindsets fairly quickly and you can catch yourself getting into funky ones, what I call a stinking thinking. And you'll kind of get in these funky mindsets where you'll tell, oh man, we're spending too much money. Oh, this is never going to work. Or this is, and it's like, and it's just negative self-talk. It's just fear. It's just fear, 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 fear over and over and over again, new layers of fear. And if you can catch those things before they really take you over and you go, no, that's not what's happening. I'm doing what I'm called to do. This is like, I believe that I was like designed to achieve this purpose, right, in the world. And then it's weird how that just kind of plays out, man. So that's kind of my philosophical take on how,
Yeah.
what happened and how I was able to actually get through all of that, because you're right. It was, and it even still is to some degree, there's a lot of challenges baked into what we're doing. And so, once we saw how big the puzzle really was and how hard the thing really was that we set out to do, and then doing it anyway, because by that time we had spent way too much money. It's like, oh wow, because you can only think so far ahead, and um, I didn't have as many like planning frameworks and things like that as I do now. But uh, I feel like I planned ahead pretty well, but you get in the weeds and it's just like, oh my God, I'm now having to learn studio design. I'm having to learn audio engineering. I'm having to learn, technology. I'm having to learn sales. I'm having to learn marketing. I'm having to learn communication, especially, community is built on communication.
Right.
And so, just all these things that it forced me to just really level up and across the board in every area of my life. And to some degree, I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to self development and growth and things like that. So, it feels good whenever I kind of like push myself to a new level. And I think you could probably resonate with that as a music creator.
Yeah. Um. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot that comes up from that, man. I feel like the main thing is, I don't remember who says it, but fear and love cannot live in the same room.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's something to approaching something with, this is what I feel like some people will probably need to rewind this, but if I'm going to butcher your quote, and I'm going to say that, like, and now I'm either going to fear, I'm going to either deal with it with fear, or I'm going to do what I'm designed to do. And this is so powerful. Like,
Hmm.
asking myself every day, like, am I designed to do this? Like, is this where I need to be going? Is this where I'm naturally going? Is this where I actually need to, can and want to go through the hardships? And because, like, another thing that I feel like a lot of people, like, coming and growing up in Israel, a lot of people choose battles, but then they complain about choosing them.
Hmm.
So, and I'm sure people in Western society see it all the time. It's like people choose something, and then they have all these weird coping mechanisms, like over drinking, over indulging, overdoing things. And that's, I feel like these are pretty strong cues that probably you're not doing what you're designed to do. Therefore, you're putting in your body substances that your body's not, it doesn't need to take, right?
Yep.
um so because you're trying to fill it with something that a numbing agent. And I feel it so strongly. Like, I feel like I've gotten goosebumps many times as you were speaking, because it's just like, when I feel like when one does what's in their purpose, they never know the ripple effects of it. And I feel
Mhm.
like even when I started this podcast, I didn't know. I was like, man, I'll meet up with awesome people, and maybe it'll get me a few also gigs and stuff like that. And the way that this came back to me has been insane, man. I feel like just yesterday I'm getting a message from somebody. Oh, I've heard of your podcast from two different people, and now I actually saw your music, and I'm like, this is dope. So I want to work with you. So it's like, in all these weird ways, the way that I'm adding value to people's lives, just because I feel like it, just because I feel like this is what I'm good at, actually,
Mhm.
it actually backfires in a good way into the music. It feeds my catalog, because suddenly more and more people want to take part in whatever I'm doing, and which is just like, it's something that I would have never been able to predict when I started it, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel like what you're saying is so powerful, because I mean, if you knew on day one, when you were fresh out of this university of Belmont, that you'll need 1.5 mil to start your new, if today, if you tell me that, that makes me feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like right
Yeah.
now, just saying, man, I need 1.5 mil to start something, it makes me feel uncomfortable. So I feel like it's just huge, man. And I feel like it's a great place to kind of transition into your community and into like how that developed and how that started and how people are kind of getting just in everything and in sync, of course, like how this community structure, which I can assume already how it helps them, but how it started and how it's and what it's created in other people's lives. Maybe you can say a few things that you expected and that you haven't expected and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really where it all becomes worth all the sacrifice, and why I still double down on this idea that and Bob Dylan said it the best, right? You got to serve somebody. You got to serve somebody, and
Yeah.
it's you know it's you can look at it as just some like spiritual platitude or whatever, but it really is fulfilling, and I'm sure that you're starting to see that when people come up and they're like, "Yo, that podcast episode was so dope," or "I heard you pitching coaching calls and stuff." So, like I was like, "That's awesome," that he's rolling it into that too, and so as these different facets of who you are begin to impact other people and leave an impression on them, it's for me, it's extremely fulfilling.
Mm.
That I feel like having that sense of service is the key to fulfillment in life. That you can even be overworked, stressed out, and somewhat unhappy and still be fulfilled.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that, but
Yeah.
but
Been there. And
there
I'm
are
sure you too.
distinctions, of kind of like, people kind of lump in, when you say, what do you want? What do you want out of life? Most of the time people just get down to happiness. They just want happiness, but they haven't parsed out what that means to them. A lot of times it means they want peace. Most of the time it means they want fulfillment, because they say, they want happiness, and then they try to buy something that's going to make them happy, or they try to marry somebody that's going to make them happy, or whatever, and that never actually works, because what they're really wanting is fulfillment. Anyway, I digress here a little bit. So, the community is what gives me just tremendous fulfillment. Working with it's called Home, which stands for Helping Our Music Evolve. That's the name of the community. Everybody out there, if you want to look it up, it's homeformusic.org, and we call our members homies. So,
Hey,
so whenever I
let's
refer to
go.
when I
That's
refer to
cool.
them, I'm
I
going
did
to
not
talk
see that
about
coming, even
I'm going to
even
talk
though it
about the
should. I
homies.
should have thought
All
about
right,
it.
yeah. So these are the homies that I serve, and that it's been so amazing to watch people grow through all of these resources. And the idea is we want it to be essentially very similar to joining like a CrossFit gym, right? And I don't do CrossFit, so I'm not. But what I understand is those kinds of people that go do that, they're like really into it, and they put in the work, right? And they really go hard, and they're dedicated on a different level than like your typical gym user, right? And so there's this cultural thing that we want people that are really dedicated to being like their very best selves in all capacities, and that includes music. And so the reason being for that is because it's so damn hard. Okay. So if you're not ready to just go like all out crazy on this industry, just do something else. Right. Like it's so hard to get truly significant and sustainable revenue in the music industry is extremely challenging. That being said, it is possible. So I don't want to be like doom and gloom over here. It's so possible, and sync is a huge way of making that happen in the short term for people. So we have our, this thing is set up. I used a lot of ideas from like business incubators whenever I was setting this up. And I originally, whenever I first rolled it out, I called it a music incubator. And that was the name of of like how I described the concept to people, what they would call the category. So, the idea that, with business incubators, you can go in, you can surround yourself with other entrepreneurs who are going hard, who are really investing in themselves, who are trying different tools and different things. And you can work with them in the same place. You can get around workshops and mentors, and you can find investors to pitch to and all of that, right? So it's very, very similar to that. And we just basically look at the facility itself as a means to building the business.
Mm.
So it's ultimately, home exists to create business outcomes for people.
Mm.
It exists as a path for you to be able to actually treat a music career as an entrepreneur in a major way, where you have significant infrastructure that you can actually afford. You have, again, you're working around other people who are really dedicated to their craft and really good at what they do. People with different skill sets, where you have people that are doing blogs, you have people that are doing content, you have people that are doing marketing, you have people doing management, you have, our primary thing is serving the creator. So that's our primary stakeholder. But our goal has always been to attract the entire ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So the mission of Home is to provide a supportive community for artist development and music production. And, it took me a long time to whittle down the mission statement to being that simple. And as another tip, I would tell people that want to start a crazy business that nobody's done before, whittle down the mission as much as you can and try to get it precise. And so the two things that I guess there's really four pieces to that statement. Support, because I felt like I didn't have any support in the music business. It just felt like I was just out there beating my head against the wall, trying to do it all by myself from my bedroom or whatever, right? I'm sure people listening can resonate with that. Artist development didn't seem like it made any sense anymore, because record labels were no longer developing artists, right? So artists are just expected to develop themselves in their bedroom or whatever, and on TikTok, and that's how you develop a truly timeless and meaningful artist. That seems whack, right? And then music production, understanding that music production, the tools had gotten easier and easier, and that you didn't need consoles anymore. Like I'm not sitting at an SSL or a Neve console right now. We have the Apollo X8P, and we've got, a couple of choice pieces of outboard gear. But it's totally plug and play, where you can roll in with your laptop and just dock right into this station right here and just be, we have really nice monitoring system, and the room itself and the treatment's very, very nice. And that's really what you need. So it was supportive community, artist development, music production. And those are basically the four pillars that I've been focused on, or that we've been focused on since day one. And so as people come in, we try to give them a sense of community first, where the first thing is trying to get you plugged in with people, right? Like, who do you need to know that's already part of the organization and knows how things work? Because, it's a community fundamentally. And then we want to give you support. And a lot of times the first level of support we give you is training on the facility. So if you're in person, we have an online community as well, so people can join from anywhere. But most of our members still join from Nashville, and they come in and they join the facility, and then we have to train them on the facility, right? Because our model is you use it like it's your own home. So if you book a session at midnight, nobody's going to be in here to help you set up. You better know how it works. And, that's a big deal. It's weird. Nobody's doing that, right? So that's been a huge sort of component to what we're doing, training people, giving them support, hands-on, letting them get hands-on to develop their craft using, a lot of people that come in are dope at making music on a laptop, but then you show them a patch bay and they're like, I, I don't know what that is. Like, I've never
Yeah.
used that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand. So, and that's not a knock. It's just how it is. And so we're really trying to fill the gap between a home studio, right? What everybody's working in, probably where you're at right now. And then the like big time old school studios, right? Our goal is to sit in the middle where we have a lot of the amenities that you would need from a nice big studio. It's commercial, it's 24/7, but we're really catering to people that are on the come up and that are, outgrowing their bedroom. They're outgrowing their basement. They have important clients that they don't want to bring in there, right? Um, so, and then a lot of our programs focus on developing artists, and then a lot of our programs focus on music production. And within that, we have these pitch events that happen, and that's where we, bring in the sync reps. We've brought in music supervisors, and we've got a disco library that we're putting together as well. We've got an in-house A&R program where we've got some of our top members who are like already crushing it in the sync game. They can basically pick out other members and put them all in a room together and give them a brief to to work on stuff, um, and then basically just help them, get their chops up for doing sync and making records that have like a sort of immediate commercial value, not just a artistic value.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
and we
that
have
it's
mentors as well. So there's business mentorship, and so on top of that, all
let's
smashed
go.
together. Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, I'm thinking I might have to immerse myself one time in this and like I might have to come out to Nashville maybe next year before PMC or something like that.
Please. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to
they
go
they
go
usually do the music biz conference here. So that's it's a good time to come through.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about this later, but I feel like yeah, it's just this ability to have many people from different levels and like I think that's a powerful thing by itself because people um that's the thing, like right now today I feel like the thing that has me resisting the most, like creating the most resistance in me, is people just reaching out cold and saying, "Hey, I want to work with you," kind of thing. Like, "Hey,
Mm,
what's up? Well, let's collabo." But when you're in a space with many creatives, you cannot do that. Like it's just the distinct difference that will always stay between online and offline is it just nothing will be able no AI will be able to switch these things because if I like you and you're a bit below me in the sync game, I'll go of course I'm taking you for this brief, because I know
mhm,
you. And in online, I feel like there is this level of investment that is inevitably a bit lower because I don't see
mm,
you in real life every day. I feel like we
absolutely.
wouldn't have the bond we have if we wouldn't have met in real life. It's just
That's
that.
absolutely
It's just
true.
that. We've
Mhm,
walked, we've gotten our hands a little bit dirty. We walked from one place to the other. We went to waterfalls. It's just like there's this power to it that I don't think you can find in just online. And that's my question to you is, okay, so when you upgraded from online to offline, what happened? Like what were the main things that you started seeing that you were surprised about?
what do you mean, went from online to offline?
So you started the community online, right?
No, no,
No?
created a
Okay.
platform so that because I was thinking through like, okay, what happens when somebody signs up how do I get them connected? Because I did at least know, I will give myself credit for understanding the importance of community, and like connecting people to each other was going to be a huge piece of the puzzle. And so I came up with essentially a member directory model first. And it had a little basic social feed, but we also built in the booking count. So I needed a custom like booking software to book, or at least what I thought. I actually didn't need custom, come to find out, but this is what you learn. So
Yeah.
anyway, I built all this stuff in preparation so that whenever we found the space, I actually had a lot of this like back end technological stuff figured out, thankfully. But no, the first product is the space. Well, is the physical community, I'll say. Really, the product itself is the community, but people think of it as an in-person thing for the most part. And during COVID, we just got a lot more nerdy about how to deliver as much value as we could online. And so we've steady been growing that ever since. We've got like one dude that'll jump in and chime in from like Nigeria. And we got a guy that joined from Austin a couple weeks ago. And so it's really cool because we're not really marketing the online thing very hard, other than like the occasional podcast or something. But I'm not out there like running ads for the online community yet. That will be a thing eventually, but first things first, it's like the like to your point, especially creative music people, feely type people, right? I'll just say, like, we want to be around other people. And a lot of times it's funny because even music people who aren't necessarily extroverted, because I feel like a lot of us aren't truly extroverts.
Yep.
We need like smaller kind of like, hangs where we can, in a more intimate setting. And again, we're bonded by this sense of culture of like, we're here to do this professionally. We're investing in ourselves and in our craft and in our business. We're taking this seriously. That goes a long way to where you'll kind of forgive the fact that somebody doesn't know how to produce very well yet. Right. Because it's like, maybe that's not really what they're going to end up doing long term. Maybe they're going to end up being a manager. It's like sometimes people, we put together this thing called the homies alignment, which is like a kind of, it's like this sort of philosophical code that we have for everybody, like our 10 commandments kind of thing. Right. And one of them is, we can all win if we choose to play the right game. And a lot of times people forget that it's their choice to choose which game they're playing. And people think about things so much in terms of competition, and they think that they've got to play the exact same game as somebody else and play it better. And that's not true at all. You have to play a different game, and you have to play it in your own way. And, to your point earlier, like it is important to be able to be a little bit fluid in your identity of just like, I thought for sure when I moved out here, I was like, either I'm going to make it like as a songwriter, maybe like a utility player, or an artist. But I was like, that's, those are like my things. And it served me so much whenever I started first seeing myself as a producer. And then I started seeing myself more on the artist development side. And it's really been a beautiful thing to open myself up to these other possibilities, while also like I still play music, so I think that as strange as it is, I'm looking at, it's been 6 years since we opened home. And if I would have spent the same 6 years building my music career, full time, who knows? But I would say the likelihood is that I'm more connected and more prepared now if I were to push hard and back into the music space. It's like I have everything I need now,
Mm,
and so I could do it so much faster than I could have back then, right? So, it's definitely it's been a very challenging thing, but at the same time, it's like, again, going back to the purpose things, feeling like it's really, I'm like uniquely suited to be doing this. So
yeah. Which is, I mean, like you're describing something interesting. It's kind of the essence of what it means to be a label, actually. Like if I'm thinking about it
yeah.
from a perspective, because what you're doing, when you're a label or an agency or whatever, all you're doing is connecting a bunch of people that make really dope music, and you kind of get it all together. You put it out in a way that's monetarily, hopefully beneficial for both of you, and uh, um, and I mean that's a form of art by itself. And I feel like it's a way to bring yourself more of what you were initially planning to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's why it fascinates me.
absolutely.
Like label owners fascinate me, edit um just people who are on top of the business side really fascinate me, because there has to be an artistic motive to it. Of course, maybe not when you're a universal, because I mean, like you're business predominantly, but I feel like especially in sync, most of the publishers, most of the library owners are actually artists,
Hmm.
which is it's an interesting thing. It's just like it's kind of where I feel like I want to be in the future, is a person who knows the business from has a perspective on the business where he can help elevate other people,
Hmm.
and then create something of my own. I still feel resistance towards it. I still haven't acted on it. Maybe I have, because I have brought artists to work with me on albums, but like it's just I feel like that's the outlook that you've had. It's kind of like a 360 of how do we make this actually work,
Hmm.
in a world where there are so many people who identify themselves as musicians but don't try to do it on the daily basis, or like people who tell me, I'm a rapper, I'm a whatever. And the question I have is, did you write a rap today? And
Right.
then
Yeah.
and then like, just I'm just saying, probably, if I'm being honest, probably 8 out of 10 would say no. And
Right.
then I would say, well, you're not a rapper today.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing with where I get really annoying and nuanced is here, because I feel like there's a lot of gray area here, where people don't are uncomfortable to operate in. They're like, well, I include myself in this a lot of time. Well, I'll make a bunch of music for publishers. I'll make six figures, and that's going to be my life. And that's kind of like, it's a bit delusional, right? Because nobody will know where the world will be in 6 years. Nobody will know what will happen with AI in 6 years. Nobody
Oh yeah.
knows all these things. So I'm just curious about people like you, because you've created something for yourself that is, that to me, it's bulletproof. Why is it bulletproof? Because you are looking at things from a bird's eye view. You have to, because if you wouldn't have the space you have right now. Like you would have either been like in I hope you're not in crazy debt with like really sketchy people, or you would have you're just like doing your thing, and you have to take in all the things. And as you were saying, you took in all the things. You took the opportunity to take in all these things and create opportunities for other people. And that's where the wonder is for me. That's where
Mm.
the it factor is for me. It's like, this is what the musicians who succeed are doing right. That's why I'm interested in all this, and that's why I'm kind of digging into things that may seem a little bit off to some people. Like they seem like, what do you care about the mindset? Tell me the stories, tell me the success, tell me this, tell me that. And I just feel like this is more important. The more important thing is the wonder, the curiosity, and the ability to create something remarkable.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same. It's one and the same. You know, again, going back to like the judging the moment. So if you can treat your life like a creative act, or if you can treat your business like a piece of art, right? And if you can learn, so just like when you're making art, you feel like you're in the flow and like you're channeling this thing, when that melody hits you and you're like, oh, that's so dope or whatever. And, and it feels like you're really tapped in and you're listening to something else that's out there. Right.
Right.
I mean, that's the way I've heard other people describe it. It's the only way I know how to describe it. And what that is a micro version of what you have to do to be a sort of like what I call artistic entrepreneur. So if you stretch out that process of creating a piece of art and you stretch it out to 10 or 20 years and you make your business that art, and you go through the process of getting that first idea and channeling it and then working through and actually muscling through, the 20th mix revision. You know what I'm saying? Like, the part where you're like, oh, and sometimes that's not true. The songs go, easier. And typically the better you get, the more often you find your stride within the creative process. And you just kind of like, oh, wow, that one was actually pretty fluid or pretty easy. But if you think of it on the same level as like your business or your life in general, often use the term creating the life of your dreams, because my life is being around a lot of dope music people as the kind of people I want to hang out with.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it was a very holistic plan, and again, I channeled it from somewhere else, and I was able to stick with it long enough to learn the instruments, learn the tech, learn the tools, learn the things, stick with it, come back to it, stick with it, stick with it, stick with it, stick with it. And, if you can find this immense amount of joy within let's call it a 4-hour time span of making art, what's keeping you from finding the same immense amount of joy over a 40-year time span of creating this, like, life that you really want, whatever that looks like. And again, it goes back to fear. Over, like, we're just all dealing with that. Like, even in the studio, people are dealing with fear, even as I would say, especially in the studio, whenever you're green or whatever, right? So that's the way I try to think of it, is like, I catch myself judging things of like, oh God, I don't want to have to do another sales email or another, it's like, oh, the stuff that you have to do, or you create a new automation to help with this thing or that thing. And, all these like super nerdy business things that I never really pictured myself doing in the first place. But at the same time, if you zoom out and you can look at your life and go, wow, okay, I'm actually weaving a sort of tapestry of things with all of this that is adding up to a life that I really love and that I want. And you can see that trajectory, then it makes it worth it. And it makes you feel like, you're living life on your own terms. And I think that's what most musicians want, out of life. Is I want to do it on my own terms. I want to be me. I want to be creative, and I want to, you know, innovate and do things differently, make my own sound, make my own, leave my mark on the industry. I feel like most people.
How do you think that people can learn music business today without maybe going to a music university? How do you think they can educate themselves about the music business?
Oh, it's a great question. Just like a shameless plug, like I write a weekly newsletter, so I would send everybody to homie.news.
I'll put it in the
Um,
show notes.
yeah, and then you can find my podcast at homie.show as well. And I'm
Homie
doing
dot
my
show.
best to spin all these ideas out in my way, but there's a lot of great people out there teaching about the music business. I think at this point in time, not having access to the information is no longer an excuse.
Yep.
And I just don't think that moving forward that anybody, especially with AI and stuff, you have no excuse at this point. Like I can go and prompt an AI for like a good artist marketing plan, and it's going to get me like 80% of the way there. It's that good already. It's like it doesn't know, you know, all the stuff, but to like there's no like not having the information doesn't compute to me anymore. The information is we're swimming in information. Question is, who do you know? How do you know who to trust? And how do you know that you're making the right decisions? And that's really a lot of that boils down to strategy. Having a super clear picture of where you're going and a really dope plan for how to get there, right?
Mm.
And that's what a lot of music creators are missing out on, in my opinion. After I've coached hundreds of music creators at this point in time, and worked with probably over 1,000, and a lot of time it's just a complete lack of strategy, like a complete lack of clear goals, a complete lack of here's my best thought out plan of how to get to that goal, which is basically what a strategy is.
Mm.
um and so that's really what I focus a lot on uh in my educational stuff, is helping people develop mindset and develop strategy. And like I said, I spent a lot of it into personal development too, because if you can just like program yourself to show up every day and kick ass, that's like 90% of the battle, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's like literally a program that you can figure out how to run in your brain, you know?
Mm.
So
Yeah, man. I feel like that's a good a good place perhaps to leave our listeners with our round one. But what is there anything you'd like to kind of add before we leave? Anything about the community or your podcast or anything that you're looking to I mean, just any last wisdom for the listeners on this podcast?
sure. A couple of things, you know, just the fact that it's sync gems. I want to bring it home a little bit with that. First of all, if there are people out there that are listening to this that are pitching for sync, you're a sync rep, you're a sync agent, or you're a music supervisor, a media buyer, some kind, please reach out to us, Logan at homeformusic.org. We would love to get you plugged in with our community. Again, it's a nonprofit. It's something that you can kind of do good for the community and for the future of music, and just make yourself available to share your wisdom with the homies. So that's, little pitches like that is how we get people to come in and help out. And that was part of the vision, is as a collective, you have so much more bargaining power with people. And especially because we set this up as a nonprofit, I play that card a lot, because it really does make a difference. It's not about enriching me. It's about creating this new paradigm where music creators have the power. They have, that's what I tell people. We're putting the power back in the hands of music creators. With a home membership, the goal is that you will have everything you need to succeed and a clear path to get there. You still got to put in the work. Still, you just joined the CrossFit gym, right? So it's like still a shit ton of work to do. But having a clear path, knowing how to get, to that level of that high performance and develop the business that you want to develop. And that the goal is for there to be a home for music creators everywhere. So everywhere that there's a big population of music creators, we want one of these things to exist. Another analogy I use is the YMCA, how they're just kind of like, you see those things everywhere, and it's a nonprofit, and somehow they figured out how to put those things everywhere, and it's a great community for people to plug into in a lot of places. Some places it's sketchy or whatever, but no, home will never be sketchy as long as I'm alive. So, but the idea is that, we're setting this up to scale. And I still believe that is, when the vision was put, into my soul or whatever, that was it. It was like, this is going to be a big thing. And it was scary. And it still is scary. It's always one, because what got you here won't get you there. Right. So as soon as you accomplish one thing, there's a whole new mountain that you have to climb. You finish that mountain and there's a whole new mountain beyond that one that you have to climb, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So, that's kind of what I would leave people with, is don't be scared to take on something big. Don't judge the situation. Stay focused in the present moment. Keep your power by, owning your life and owning your decisions, not being a victim. And just believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, that's, there's almost nothing that you can't do within reason. If you really truly believe that you can do it, it's pretty wild. So,
right. And before we get out, how can people find you, get in contact with you, get in contact with your community?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on all the social medias. You can, just look me up on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Mindset and Music. That's what it is on X as well, as Mindset and Music. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not super active on social media. It's one of those things where I love to write. I love to put out my newsletter and to do educational things and to coach and stuff like that. But social media is a big thing. So if you reach out and I don't get back to you immediately, I'm not trying to throw any shade. Yeah. Reach out to me. My email address is logan@homeformusic.org. Very, very open. You can reach out through our website and stuff too. You can go to homeformusic.app and you can create a free account on our community and just start engaging with all the homies. And yeah, would love to hear from people. If you found out about that, about the community through this, shoot me a DM once you create your account, and we'll chat it up.
Hell yeah, man! Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Roy. That's great.
Thanks for listening to Helping Our Music Industry Evolve. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with a homie. If you want weekly strategies delivered to your inbox, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter at homie.news. And if you want to grow with a community of music industry professionals, become a member at homeformusic.org. Peace.